Hello everybody! From Red Barrel all the way back in 2013, Outlast released to raving reviews and immediate success. At this point, the series has sold over 15 million copies across all platforms, and it's left an impact on what horror can be.
It has been a minute.
Outlast 1 and 2 stand as two of the scariest games I've ever played. This video was obviously originally meant to come out in October, but we're here now. And I don't know if I'm really happy about that. The atmosphere is so unsettling from the get-go. I mean, similarly to Resident Evil 7, the intro shows us that we are in a totally secluded location in the middle of buttfuck nowhere. This is literally the first thing the game does before whipping out the titular device of the camcorder. This is the big gimmick of the game, where we get to use night vision to navigate the dark areas, which there are lots of. And the night vision of this camera is our only sense of safety. The unique thing about this game was that previous horror games before it had ways to fight back. You'd gain weapons, or the monster would have some kind of weakness. But we only have two options in Outlast, and that is to run or to hide. We're going to look at that more in depth as each segment arises, but I am not smart enough or good enough at the game to tackle this alone. So I'm bringing in an expert, someone who has had the skill and the balls to not only complete the game on multiple occasions, but to platinum the game.
Maybe not.
Let me sell you the green!
Oh!
I don't know how he does this shit. If we didn't know any better, we'd assume this place was abandoned, until we see this peeping Tom in the window. We get used to the movement as we try and sneak into and through the main building, and I'm starting to think we would have been better off in Arkham.
Oh!
This first jump scare is a great one, and has somehow got me multiple times, but it doesn't give us the release that a jump scare normally does, because we're still insanely on edge. We've only just got into this place. We don't know what is around the next corner, and it's fucking dark. Thankfully though, we pretty quickly understand that this maybe isn't the best place to be, so our objective from here on out is just to leave.
I know what comes next.
Little pig.
Iconic jump scare, and this is the moment that finally breaks the suspense that has been building throughout this entire opening sequence. It's so well done because we enter an animation of getting through the tight gap, and then he comes in. I mean, when you enter an animation in the game, you just assume that you're safe. So we let our guard down for the briefest second, and the game saw it coming. After a strange bold man sat over us and looked through our home video collection, we have to do some back and forth before going to the basements. Our goal is now simple: escape. Our journalism intent is out of the window. We've seen enough, but of course, getting out is going to be much harder than it was to get in. This is the other thing this game does immensely well. The gameplay style makes sure we have no hope, because there is no combat system. We can only run, which is a risk, so staying out of sight is the best case in most scenarios. This crafts a whole new level of fear because we are genuinely just utterly powerless. It completely alters how we tackle confrontation. Putting us on the back foot so early works because that's the core gameplay loop. It's just run and hide, but what makes it different in each section is trying to navigate the disturbingly freaky asylum.
You know, one of the most challenging things is just the map knowledge, because I don't fucking have any.
On paper, this mechanic could lose steam, however the escalation of the story continues to keep us in the hold of its sheer dread.
And it's scary because you're limited to essentially what you can do.
The game has jump scares, but it's very focused on the psychological horror. The storytelling is excellent, so much of it is done through the terrifying environment.
Oh, document.
Now that the general aim of the game is to escape the asylum, I think that helps us as a player because it's an actual sane decision, rather than the bad horror movie and game decisions we so often see. Even though we don't know too much about Niles, we know he's at least not a total fucking idiot. After this opening, we have our first segment of solo stress, trying to turn the generator on, and it proves futile as this creepy bold-ass dude sedates us, claiming we have something to see, showing us some footage where some kind of force is throwing around and ripping apart armed soldiers in some kind of laboratory, and then we awake in a cell. So the first big character we run into is obviously Chris Walker, literally, and we start to put a picture together of what happens with him as we meet other characters. Another memorable pair are the Koch twins, who we see too much of and too much in general, Dr. Traeger is probably my favourite. Due to his welcoming nature at first, but we quickly realising that's all a part of the facade. He's just having a blast throughout this whole sequence.
You want to head out and take a stroll? Go ahead, I'll wait here. Go on, run free. I'm in no hurry. No? All right. Those are the grindstone. I like that. Okay, then, right.
And was the first big reminder that I'm not good at this game.
Buddy!
I feel like that would hurt, you know.
But interestingly, there seems to be different factions to the asylum. Those within faith, and others sadistic science, and some just caught in the crossfire. In the latter half of the game, we see a patient who had set fire to the place, and we see that he isn't malicious with intent, but a victim of the Murkoff Corporation's abuse.
So let me just get the angle. Yeah, a little Dutch angle.
Turned us into these things because nobody cares about a few forgotten lunatics.
There are a lot of threads that we see set up throughout the game that don't all come together until the very end, and even then some of it's left pretty vague. The big one is the Wall Rider. We hear the name early on. A supernatural force that we slowly see more and more of, and it's important to note the journals we write as we go on. They seemingly get more unhinged. This is because Miles is losing his grip on reality with the insane shit he's seeing every 5 minutes in this asylum. I think this is so directly put on us as well, because as we're looking for Father Martin at one point in the game, a patient that we walk past asks us, how can you be sure you're not a patient? And at this point, I don't think we are sure. We cross the Koch twins one last time before witnessing Father Martin strung up on a cross, yapping about the Wall Rider signifying the end of death, essentially, and we have been the ones chosen to witness it.
Remember this, because in Whistleblower, it'll make sense. Outlast DLC Whistleblower released all the way back in May 2014, around about a year after Outlast released. The name Whistleblower actually comes from an email Miles got sent in the original game, which led Miles on his devastating investigation at Mount Massive. In Whistleblower we play as Waylon Park. Waylon Park is an employee at Murkoff working on Project Wall Rider. Waylon being traumatized and overall sickened by what Murkoff actually did, he sends out this whistleblower email to Miles, hoping that Miles exposes Murkoff and ends them once and for all. The reason I love this DLC so much is because it explains why Miles actually went to Mount Massive. This also gives us some background information about Waylon. We get to see the way Waylon was treated by Murkoff once they actually found out he sent this email to Miles. We also get to see how both stories intertwine using parallels. For example, when Miles is a witness to Father Martin's sacrifice in the church, when you play as Waylon, you actually see the church burn down as well. You also see Dr. Traeger dead on the floor when you play as Waylon. I feel like this is the way the game's trying to tell us that we're only minutes behind Miles, as it seems. In the original game at the very end, we know that Miles gets overtaken by the Wall Rider and becomes the main hope. And at the very end of Whistleblower, when we're walking out to Miles' car, we actually look back and see the Wall Rider. If you ever get a chance to play Whistleblower, I highly recommend it. It tells you the full story of Mount Massive and what happened there and why it happened, as well as brings new characters along. A lot more jump scares. Overall, Whistleblower does a really good job in showing us how both Outlast 1 and Whistleblower combine. But it's also a somewhat sad ending. The game begins with Waylon trying to reach out to Miles to expose Murkoff and hoping he'll just report and then be on his way out. However, as we know in Outlast 1, that didn't happen at all. Without knowing, Waylon essentially creates his own mess, and at the end of the story, unfortunately sees Miles come down the stairs as the Wall Rider himself. The main thing I like about Outlast is it's completely different to any other horror game you play. It's a lot similar to Resident Evil, except without the puzzles and the combat. If you was to read about Outlast, you probably wouldn't think it's that scary. All it is just you're in an asylum with a bunch of mental people, with a corporation that's decided to make everyone insane, and you're just there witnessing everything for yourself. On paper it's not scary, but playing the game is a different story.
God, you just would stop when you realise that there's
All you got in Outlast 1 and Whistleblower is run, duck, and jump, and of course the night vision camera that runs out of batteries. You can't defend yourself. Beautiful guy. Damn. So you're in constant fear. And overall, the map layout is pretty much a maze. The map layout with Outlast and Whistleblower is really claustrophobic. You being in pretty much constant darkness while being chased around by mental people, and obviously with the music in the background while they're running after you, the jump scares, you know, you go around a corner and there's a bunch of fingers in a bowl Huh? Outlast isn't known for being a hard game, it's just extremely scary. The game only ever gets difficult if you try to platinum it. Of course, if you haven't saw one of my previous videos over on Jack's channel, I did platinum the game for the 3rd time. Of course, trophies and achievements, they're different depending on what console you're on, but if you play it on Xbox, you're in for a challenge. In Outlast, you have difficulties such as, you know, normal, easy, hard, but then you're met with Nightmare and Insane. If you go for a normal playthrough on Nightmare, you are met with the hardest difficulty you'll play. Except there is one more that's a bit of a different play style and is even harder. This game mode is called Insane. Insane is essentially you have one life, you cannot save, you have to do it all in one go, while being on the same difficulty level as Nightmare. If you get hit, you're dead. Enemies are faster, you're slower, and overall the game is just much harder. Just completing Insane mode is one trophy. But on Xbox, there's a trophy called Energizer, and it is by far the hardest trophy I've ever tried to get in any game I've played. You have to play Insane mode and not reload your camera battery once, which means you're running around in darkness, memorizing the map. Of course, it's not the hardest trophy ever to get in gaming. There's also something similar on Xbox, on Outlast 2, and I keep saying Xbox because the trophies on Xbox seem to me much harder than anywhere else for some reason. But just to jump to Outlast 2 real quick, there's a trophy called Messiah, and it's essentially the same thing, just don't reload the camera battery and play on Insane mode. And of course, Outlast 2 is a lot longer than Outlast 1. But overall, I'd give Outlast a solid maybe 9.5 out of 10. It's really high up there. It's such a good flow of a game that I could play it so many more times over and over again. It gives you that perfect scare. The scary level's pretty much perfect, and the lore behind everything is just a true masterpiece in storytelling. It's one of them games that you just have to play. I just want to thank Jack for allowing me to be part of this video. He knows how much I love Outlast, he knows how much I've played it, and being part of this video today has kind of reminded me of how good Outlast really is. I also hope you enjoy the gameplay, because some of it is generally hilarious. Seeing the side-by-sides of me and Jack, you know, someone who's played the game a lot and knows what's coming, compared to someone who hasn't played it so much, it's really funny.
Oh!
Oh my
And we're
goodness gracious.
Father Martin claimed that now the elevator was ready to take us to the exit so we could show the rest of the world. Except obviously, it doesn't do that. And now we find ourselves in that very sci-fi laboratory that we saw on the security cams earlier in the game. It's here we see the massacre that took place in that footage and the still living Dr. Wernicke. Apparently kept alive by Billy, who is also the cause of the Wall Rider. So basically, the morphogenic engine is a machine that allows individuals to control nanoswarms through lucid dreaming. But the only people actually able to control it are patients on the verge of madness, those who have seen enough horror to affect their mental state significantly. And this is why it's relevant that we've seen ourselves grow more insane through our journal notes. When we get the full picture of all of this, it's tragic. These patients are experiments for the Murkoff Corporation, intentionally putting people through intense trauma just for their own gain, and all of these failed experiments are the patients that we've seen across the game. Those who aren't capable to control the Wall Rider are just left over in the asylum. Even the creator, Dr. Wernicke, shares regret for thinking this technology was controllable. We don't fully know how the machine works, but we understand that it originated in Nazi Germany. All of this information can be found through documents in the game. It was conceived as a device to be used within the war. Presumably, they had the hope to use multiple Wall Riders in military fashion. We also learned that if patients in the machine aren't receptive, they rapidly begin growing lesions and tumors, once again evident by the population within the asylum. Wernicke informs Miles that the only way to stop the Wall Rider is to pull Billy's life support, which we do. But this results in the Wall Rider entering us. Evidently, after the night's events, he has become a very suitable host for the Wall Rider to inhabit. But in his attempts to leave, he is stopped by Wernicke's associates and shot.
Gott in Himmel. You have become the host.
You'd think this is the end for Miles, but I'm not so sure, as we see the Wall Rider then emerge to attack them. And that's where our story ends for the first Outlast. We spoke earlier how important this game was to the genre, but I have to reiterate that again now. I think it's a pretty short game really, but it doesn't need to be any longer than it is. And I think all the additions to the lore that came after this only enhance the original horror. I think what we see in Outlast 2 could very easily be built off the morphogenic engine with how it affects the mental state of the residents in that village. And in both games we see the religious repercussions of such godlike experimentation, I guess. Both games see a developing madness, and with hindsight after the second game, it makes us realize that when you boil it down, Murkoff's whole deal is human experimentation. The background storytelling, realistically, in this first game alone, is what really makes it scary. Of course, the darkness and set pieces do an incredibly effective job at that too, with enemies like Walker and Traeger. Mechanically, the game is outstanding. To make such a simple loop lasts over the course of the game, and it doesn't get easier. It makes any brief idea of hope something that we want to hold on to. When we hear Traeger's voice, we are like dying for a friend here. The claims that Martin would let us out, we hope that he's telling the truth, but obviously in all cases it's not. We don't have any defense here. We've just been running and hiding, so any element of faith we just hang on to with our lives. I think the lack of any fight back allows the story to flow so nicely too. The growing insanity within Miles' head makes perfect sense because our only options are to run and hide, so we're constantly on our toes. We have to be ready for anything. And that sucks when the atmosphere is so terrifying. And of course, I do have to mention the jump scares.
Jump scare. Cool.
Oh! My God.
For sure there's quite a lot, but I think almost all of them work. They never feel forced in any way, they exist to progress the growing absurdity of the place, which does get less and less believable as we go on. I mean, we start to question if something supernatural's at play, and obviously there is an explanation to it when we get to the end of the game.
Do you believe your test subjects achieved something supernatural?
But the fact that it has us questioning it is proof that we're all going insane as we go through this game. We get such small jigsaw pieces to put together, and that's why there's so many lore explain videos to find on YouTube, and it is super interesting. I'm yet to play the Outlast Trials.
Since recording this, I actually have been playing the Outlast Trials, and well, it's pretty good. Why did they leave it until last?
There's someone
Oh fuck! Oh! I think I might be about to get executed. No, please. Don't do it. No, please.
Without getting too much into the other games though, it's harrowing to see the events of Mount Massive alone. The panic that ensues whenever you encounter an enemy and have to double back and run in and out of places to avoid death is utterly stressful, because it's so revolved around timing as well. For example, a segment towards the end, we're being chased by Walker and it requires us to hide in a room by a door, but let him break one door down and time it perfectly so we can run past him. It's quite a demanding game at times and requires you to think on your feet and be conservative with your only resource, which is the batteries. I played this on normal difficulty and still found myself in moments where I had no battery left, but as I say, I'm not good at this.
No, do not.
If I come back to the final sequence of the game in the lab, it just emphasizes how insane this whole thing is. This is a huge lab that obviously lost control at some stage, but presumably the asylum was already getting filled with patients as is. If you're watching this, I imagine you've played Outlast, or at least are very into it. But it's still very much worth talking about today because it showed what horror games could evolve into, and it wasn't too long after this that we got the likes of Alien Isolation, which is my favourite game of all time. The horror lies in what's not seen just as much as what we deal with at face value. We witness some really twisted and disturbed stuff here as we roam the shady asylum that maybe had more in common with the absolute Batman Arkham Asylum. This game provides us with a snippet at the full picture of whatever the Murkoff Corporation are up to, and I think even now there's still a lot more to come from the world of Outlast.